everyone, my name is Annette Cross. While I'm in the process of creating my own manga titled Having Faith, I love to create videos to help you in the process of creating your own mangas, comics, or light novels. Today I wanted to answer some of the questions you have for me all about creating your own projects. I've received some amazing questions and I can't wait to share them with you. How many pages should be in a chapter of a manga? And how many chapters should be in a volume? It really depends on the manga you're creating, but most manga will typically have 16 to 20 pages, especially if they're released in a weekly manga like Weekly Shonen Jump. In monthly manga magazines, a chapter length might usually be from around 30 to 50 pages long. If you're creating a series with a lot of action, I would recommend choosing more shorter chapter lengths to really keep interest and keep up the pace of the story. However, if you are going for a series with more detail and more complicated chapters, then you might want to range for chapters of a longer length. Now, the amount of chapters per volume is also up to you, but in a standard manga size of around 180 to 220 pages, the number of chapters will usually be around 9 to 12 chapters per book. Now, if you have a book with more pages, then you might have the number of chapters more around 4 to 5 chapters per volume. Twin Botang asked, what are some options for introducing a new character in a scene? While I do plan on making a video specifically to cover all aspects of this question, I will give you some quick tips in this video. First of all, I recommend you focus on the most important aspects of that character when you are introducing them. So rather than trying to describe all possible attributes of the character, instead put the biggest focus on the main attribute of the character, and it's going to make them a lot more memorable in the scene. You can also show your character's personality through what they're doing at the time you introduce them. So when your character's meeting them or you're first showing them in the book, by what they're doing, you can really say a lot about what type of character they are. How do you describe characters in a novel? I think it's important to remember that in a novel, it's important to not get too bogged down with the details. So I recommend following the tips I mentioned in the previous question, where I recommend you focus on the most important part of that character and emphasize that attribute. So it might not be important for your audience to know about your character's hair color, but it might be very important for them to know about the fact that your character has freckles. So think about what is really important for your audience to know about and put an emphasis on the most important parts of your character. You can also describe how your character is speaking and responding to others, because that also says a lot about who that character is. Do they tend to hold back when they are saying certain things, or are they very confident and bold in the things they say? The way they respond and talk to other characters around them will really show the audience what type of character they are. Mushroom Frog asked, how do I make a manga that has multiple different stories in it? The term for that is known as an anthology, and yes, you can definitely create a book that has multiple stories in it. My advice for writing an anthology would be to put together a few stories with a main genre or a main theme, because a person who is picking up your anthology book would want to read books that are of similar genre and theme. So now keep in mind that they don't necessarily have to be the same genre, but keeping them in a similar theme at the very least will help it be consistent to an audience. Now, another good way to keep your books consistent in an anthology is to ensure that all the stories are around the same length. So try and avoid having stories of one being really, really long and another story being rather short. Try and keep them all rather consistent when you're putting them together. When you're creating a manga anthology, keep in mind that each of the stories are pretty much just one-shots all put together in a single book. So if you are looking for more tips on creating stories that would be suitable for an anthology, I recommend checking out my video on one-shot manga, which you can watch just here. Anderson Keros asked, how do you foreshadow a new character properly? If you're foreshadowing a new character, especially if they are supposed to be more suspenseful or supposed to bring drama to the story, then there are a few things you can do. One thing I do recommend is that you can show the reaction of characters who have experienced them in the past. So maybe characters who have been around this character, especially if they are a villain or a bad guy, might have a certain negative reaction when this character is mentioned. They might have certain traumas that are associated with this character. And so by showing how characters are responding to this character, even before you introduce them, your audience would already know that this character is someone who shouldn't be messed with. You can also show the results of what they have done. So you can show any destruction they may have caused. You can show, again, the characters that they have affected. You can show situations that they have affected. And so this is another way to show what they have done before you actually introduce them, to show what kind of threat this character actually poses. This next question is from Little Squishy. How do you brainstorm ideas for a new story? This is a great question, and I think the brainstorming part of creating a story is one of the most important aspects. First of all, I recommend thinking about what genres and topics you are already interested in. For example, you might know that you are interested in horror stories. However, there are different genres of horror. There are more thriller stories, there are psychological horror stories, There are horrors that put more of a focus on the paranormal, and so by diving deeper into what types of genres and topics you like, you can get a better idea about what kind of story you actually want to create. From there, I recommend you brainstorm the ideas you already have. So look at ideas you already have and build on that using the base questions. So the base questions are who, what, when, where, why, and how. So for example, if one of your ideas is that there might be a haunted house in the woods, you could break it down further by asking who lives in the house, what caused the house to be haunted, when was the house built, and so on and so forth. And by looking at any ideas with these base questions, you can further build on them and gain new ideas. This next question is from Hidden Ghost. When is it a good time to start storyboarding? I personally recommend starting the storyboarding after the outlining or after the script writing. However, keep in mind that different methods work for different people, but I will talk about the method that works for me, and maybe that method will work for you as well. The method I feel is easiest for me is that I do the outlining first, so I write down the basic story notes and plot points, and then from there I break it down into a script, so I write the overall script and dialogue for the scene in a script writing manner. Now once I have the basic script for the scene, from there I draw very rough sketches of the storyboarding. So basically draw the panels for the scene and where characters might be in the scene. But having the script can really help me to know exactly what types of panels I should use. So that is the method I use and the method I feel works best for me. Every creator will work a little bit differently, so I recommend trying out different methods and seeing what method works best for you when you are storyboarding your book. This next question is from Leon. What is the best way to recruit and fairly pay for manga and light novel translators? I'd recommend checking out freelance websites or manga or light novel forums because this would be the best place to actually see translators advertising their works, and you can get a general idea of prices there as well. So I recommend trying freelance websites like Freelancer, Upwork, People Per Hour, Truelancer, or Sakura Cities. And then of course you also have manga forums where you could put out an advertisement for translators, and these manga and light novel forums include the Manga Makers subreddit, the Manga Raiders forum, comic book collabs on Reddit if you're creating more of a graphic novel or a comic style book. Then of course you have International Manga Society on Facebook, where I'm actually very grateful to be part of the admin team in that book, so I highly recommend you check out that group. And then if you're creating a light novel, you might also want to check out the Web Novel Forum, where you could advertise that you were looking for a translator for your light novel. This next question is from Gold D Dragon. They asked, how do you structure your chapters? This is actually a video I plan on making a full video on really soon because it's a topic I'd really like to cover, but I will give you some quick tips on structuring better chapters here. First of all, I recommend you find the goal of the chapter. Every chapter should have a goal, and that goal should be resolved by the end of the chapter. So along with that, your chapters should be structured with a beginning. So this would introduce the characters or introduce the setting for that chapter. And then the next part should be the problem or the obstacle. So a problem that is stopping your characters from achieving that chapter goal. Then you have the rising action of the chapter, so this is all the events working up towards your characters achieving this goal or solving the problem. Then you have the main purpose of the chapter, so this might be where the problem is resolved or where you reveal something to the audience that is the true main purpose of you having this chapter in your book. And then finally, you've got the resolution, where that problem of the chapter is resolved, and maybe you leave it open for another problem to happen in the next chapter. Nigerian Pomato asked, how do I think of the next scene if nothing comes to my mind at all? This is definitely a common problem, but there are some ways I have found to work around this, and these ideas might help you as well. So what I first of all recommend you do is that if you have no ideas for the next scene, try and think about a scene that you are excited to write about. And it might be a scene that is way later on in the story, but instead skip to that scene instead and write about that first. You may find that by writing a scene that happens later on in the story, you'll actually find some new ideas that will actually help you get unstuck earlier on in the book. So by skipping further on into the story and writing the scene that you are looking forward to write about, it might help you to gain some new ideas or new knowledge so you can go back and add those ideas and work it into your story. Another good way to think of the next scene if nothing is coming to mind is to create a problem. A problem always gives your characters something to do, so if you are stuck on the next scene, you can think of a problem that your characters will have to solve before they can proceed. Problem could also be linked to the main problem or the main goal of the story. So maybe the villain character has done something bad that your character has to resolve, or maybe there has been a sudden turn of events that your character has to experience before they can develop as a character and learn something. And finally, if nothing is coming to mind for the next scene, you could try turning your story in another direction. I recommend this idea the most if you really don't have any ideas for the rest of your story as well. So If you do have ideas later on in the story, I recommend skipping to those ideas first. But if you really don't have any ideas and you don't know what to do next, I recommend trying to turn the story in a different direction, in a direction that maybe even you had not anticipated. And by turning the story around into a different direction, you can change the way your story is written, and maybe it will help you to get some fresh ideas on what to do next. This next question is from Weeb Art. What inspired me to write manga and light novels? I've loved manga and light novels since I was young, and especially when I was a kid, I loved art and I loved writing stories. It was my biggest thing. I was always writing stories or I was always drawing something. And so coming to the realization that there's actually manga out there, which is a mix of art and storytelling, was absolutely amazing to me, because from the moment I saw it, I just realized that I really want to create manga and light novels too. And I want to be able to encourage you guys as well to be able to create your own stories also. Can I use a Wacom Cintiq 16 to make manga and light novels? I wanted to include this question because I wanted to just mention that it doesn't really matter the tools you use to create a manga or light novel. The most important part is your skills. So if you wanted to create a manga with watercolors, for example, and you're good at watercolors, then go ahead and do it. If you're good at using a Wacom Cintiq 16 and you know you can use it to create something good, then absolutely do it. So I recommend finding the tools and mediums that work best for you. And certain tools that might work for one creative may not necessarily work well for you, and you need to really test out different things and find the materials and mediums that work best for you. The next question is from Gabriella. Can you express color in manga if the colors are important? I think this is a great question, and it's definitely something important to keep in mind. First of all, I recommend you describe in narration or the character's thoughts what color a certain object is, and you put the emphasis on it. For example, in your character's thoughts or narration, they might look at a coat they're wearing and they might say, oh, it's red like the flowers outside, for example. So think about a way your character might think about that thing. Or you can also describe it in dialogue as well. For example, if your character is wearing a red dress, another character in the scene might comment on it and say, oh, I love that red dress. It is very red. That is a weird example, but again, you get what I mean. So another character in a scene might say something that refers to the color of the thing your character is wearing or the color of an object. Via Justicia asks, how do I get better at writing and storytelling? Here are a few exercises that I recommend you try to get better practice in writing and storytelling. First thing you should do is, of course, practice. I recommend practicing a little bit every day because every little bit counts. And so what you could do is you could set yourself a timer, and in that short amount of time you could try writing a little paragraph every single day about anything really. So you could choose an object, you could choose a person, you could just try writing a little paragraph about that every single day to get in that practice. With timing yourself, what you could try is timing yourself for a short amount of time, say around 5 to 10 minutes, and then write as much as you can in that time without stopping for editing or different thoughts, and you might be surprised by what ideas you come out with in that short amount of time. I also recommend writing a lot for fun, so it's important to not get too stressed out about the process or overthink it. So a good way to write for fun might be to write little stories about your original characters, or you could even try writing fan fiction. I think writing fan fiction is a great idea to get writing experience because you're working with characters that are already existing, and so it's a good way to take those characters and create new stories with them to help you to get better at storytelling as well. And finally, I also recommend you build up your characters to the point where you can imagine them in different situations. So imagine what your characters might do if they were going to see a movie and what types of movies they might see. Imagine what your character might buy at a grocery store. Imagine what your character might say in a certain situation. A good way to do this is when you're out and about, you could think about, what would my characters do in this situation? Or how would my characters respond to these events? And so when you get to the point where you can easily imagine your characters in different situations, it means that your characters are very well written, and that will reflect in the story you're telling.